يا إلهي يا إلهي.
Hey guys, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Was looking at a couple of comments, and something that I've been emailed about or asked about in person also for a long time is paying for Islamic education. And I know a lot of people have questions about that because, Islam should be free and Islamic education should be free, and the prophets never asked anybody for compensation for what they were teaching. And so La nuridu minkum jazaan. We don't want, وَمَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْرٍ. I'm not asking you for any sort of compensation. So the argument is made that if you're going to teach Islam, then how can you ask for compensation? And the reality of that is a little bit different than how that's been interpreted. And also some people use the ayah وَيَشْتَرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا, that they sell the ayat of Allah for a small price, right? So you're selling the ayat of Allah. So I wanted you to understand a few things about that. And I want you to look at things from the way that I've come to understand them when it comes to this particular issue. The first thing is that preaching the message of Islam, or sharing something good, and that's what the messengers did. Instead of saying that they taught, actually what they did is they preached. And preaching and sharing good word, and sharing the news of revelation itself, is actually something that is and always has been free. And I absolutely believe in that. As a matter of fact, when I go to, in my career, if I've ever gone to conventions or, programs where I've been invited to speak and things like that, and they usually have some sort of an honorarium to pay for the speaker. Like you invite the speaker, you pay for their flights, and they pay for your honorarium and things like that. And pretty much always I've made a condition when I go to such conventions that I will not be taking an honorarium. I don't want to be compensated for doing this. This is a public service. And I'm not doing it for money, and I'm not doing it for you guys. I'm doing it because it serves the public. And I'm not interested in a position. And I've even put a condition that if you try to compensate me for this, I'm not going to come back. I don't say that that's the policy that should be for other speakers. I'm just letting you know how I see it. Sometimes I've been invited to give a khutbah in the masjid. And after I give the khutbah, they'll try to hand me like an envelope with money in it from the masjid administration. And I'll be like, no, I'm not going to take this, because that's not why I came here. This is an act of worship for which I don't wish to be paid. And if you try to do this again, I'm not coming back to this masjid again. So that's been my policy when it comes to, for myself. Again, I don't say that anybody else who gets compensated for doing so or does so or accepts honoraria and things like that is wrong. But I'm just saying what I believe for myself. When it comes to education, my philosophy is that if you want to provide a quality education, it needs to be financially independent, meaning the people that are providing it need to be financially independent, so they're not influenced by anybody from the outside, that they can provide bias-free education. If there's some governing body or somebody else that's controlling the finances for the people that are providing that education, then they're going to have to stay under control. I'll give you an easy example of that. I've seen this myself. In some political situations, you'll have an imam of a masjid, and he has his view, and he expresses that view, and the board members that control his salary will come in and say, well, we don't like what you said, so if you ever say that again, you're fired. So the guy has to choose between his livelihood as an imam or saying what he actually believes, because the people who pay his paycheck don't want to hear it, right? So he doesn't actually have independence. And so money actually ties into independence for such positions. Now the other argument is, no, none of these people should be compensated, and it should all be based on free, fi sabilillah kind of an activity. The problem with that is that's never been the case. As a matter of fact, even when Rasulullah ﷺ sent Mus'ab ibn Umair to teach the Quran in Medina, there was a stipend set for him. There was somebody who had to sponsor him. He had to live with somebody. His expenses had to be provided for. He had to be taken care of, because actually he was completely let go from a financial support point of view from his family. So that's, again, something that we oversimplify. Now, at least when it comes to myself, I can't, again, speak for anybody else. I'll tell you what I believe for myself and how I run Bayina. My philosophy in Bayina is that we need to make as much of the Quran's education and awareness free and accessible as possible to as many people around the world. But the few people and that's awareness, but when people become more serious and they want to learn more seriously, they need to show commitment, and they need to actually be part of higher quality, dedicated education. And when they do that, when they become part of something that they paid for and they committed themselves to, then that payment itself should be affordable. It should be for those who can actually afford it, and if they cannot afford it, then it shouldn't be asked of them. But those who can afford, then make it possible for everybody else that is going to be receiving free services. So how does that work in Bayina? every week I give a khutbah. I have to pay for a recording crew. We have a venue that has to be paid for. There's media, there's research teams that have to be compensated. All of those people they've left other obligations in their life to do this. And I believe in actually having a very high quality kind of service in helping people understand the Quran. So how do I afford all of that? The people that attend the events and the people that subscribe to Bayyinah TV, they help finance all of these other activities that allow for a majority of the free stuff that we produce in Bayyinah, and the things that I put out there in Bayyinah. So, and the studies that I get to do and the research that I get to do. So actually one supports the other. And that's completely fine in my view. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. As a matter of fact, if you go back to the donation model, and again, I don't ask people for donations. If you see online somebody asking for donations in my name, they're probably a fraud, because I don't ask for donations ever. But I will tell you this: what I do ask people to pay for is their own education. Like if you want to subscribe to Bayyinah TV and learn the Quran systematically or learn Arabic studies systematically, here's an extremely affordable way for you to do so. If even that is not affordable for you, no reason for you to be embarrassed. We'll find somebody to sponsor you, inshallah. That's actually my philosophy. And that's actually, and the reason I do that is because I don't want to ask for donations ever. Why? Because if we ever ask for donations, then we are at the mercy of donors. Right, and as if it's something that I'm doing that isn't actually a quality service. I believe in the education that I work on and my team works on is actually a very high quality service, and that should be something that people should pay for. That is something that they're getting a lot more in return from what they're actually paying for. That's what I believe I should provide. And if I'm not providing that quality service, then nobody should be paying for it anyway. They shouldn't be. And it's not for me to get rich. And alhamdulillah, before Bayyinah started, I was in love with the Quran, in love with studying it, and in love with teaching it. And if Bayyinah is ever not around anymore, Bayyinah is not the reason I exist. I have a goal in my life to try to understand Allah's book and to try to teach it as best as I possibly can. So that's going to be there anyway. This is what makes me happy. This is what actually I find purpose in. So, this philosophy of mine, again, those who can afford help sponsor those who can't afford, and those who are teaching are financially independent, so they're not influenced by any outside entity. This is the formula I developed myself, and the reason I developed it is because, in the ancient times, we had institutions like Waqf. We had, the madrasa system, the scholars that were teaching the religion, the masajid that they were teaching were paid for. The institutions that they were teaching in were paid for. All the expenses were covered. There were larger, standing institutions for centuries and centuries that were actually covering those expenses. It's not like expenses didn't exist. They existed, but there were outside bodies that were actually, funding and supporting those institutions and the people that worked in them. Now we're not in those luxurious times. I'm living in the United States of America. I can't wait for some kind of waqf to be there. Nor do I believe in asking people, hey, why don't you donate to this cause and eventually I'll provide a service. Get to work and provide. And if people believe in it, they're going to give. And if they don't see the service as valuable, they won't give anymore. They won't pay for that tuition anymore. If I'm willing to pay for, to get a higher quality education in, learning a new language, or to get a degree in medicine, or to get a degree in something else, or to learn something of value, then I personally would rather spend that money in my own learning for Islam. For myself, not for any of you. I'm not angry, by the way, at all. Not at all. So somebody's saying if I'm angry, this stuff does not make me angry. But I just wanted to make something clear to everybody that that this philosophy of paying for good education is actually what leads to quality. Because then, if you're not providing quality, nobody's going to be interested. Right? And if you're providing high quality, it'll have to speak for itself. It's going to be judged on its own merits. And that's my philosophy in, the cross between free education and free services and paid education. And those of you that follow me know the vast majority of my work is actually available for free. And the entire purpose of Bayyinah TV is actually to have, a systematic approach to the study of the Quran from the Fatiha all the way to Nas. And I'm in the middle of this more in-depth study that I'm working on. I pray to Allah Azza wa Jalla that over the next 10 years that's to be completed, along with the Arabic studies education that's available on there. And again, for any of you who can't afford it, most welcome. We're going to do our very best to find you a sponsor so you can get part of that education too. Otherwise, you're welcome to take advantage of all of the free resources that we continue to push out, that I continue to try to make accessible to as many people as possible. And I'm hearing lots of people asking for du'as for Kashmir and for Muslims in dire situations everywhere. That is something that's weighing very heavy on my heart, and I'm praying a lot for you and for the Muslims there. Those are not just somebody else's children. Those are our children. Those are not some other families. Those are our families. These are our people. The Ummah is in need of our prayers and our support, and may Allah Azza wa Jal protect all innocent lives, and may Allah Azza wa Jal keep us safe and preserved. This is just a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you.